Okay, guys, let's complete our homework for today. We're looking at Chapter 3, and we're going to do the practice test here. Test A. First thing they give us is a function. When they talk about functions, all they're asking for is x repeating. Is x repeating? Because if x repeats, it's not a function. The other thing they ask us is about linear and nonlinear. And with linear, we are going to be using graphing and common difference. All right, so first things first, let's talk about function for all of these. When I look at my x's, 1, 3, 5, and 3, I can see first and foremost that my 3's are repeating. So I know that this is not a function. When I come over here, I know that y equals 3 is just this line of 1, 2, 3. Here's where y always equals 3. So this is definitely a function. Because none of my x's are repeating. They all have just one y value. Over here, this is also going to be a function because this is a straight line, the equation of a straight line. This over here is virtually identical. It's still going to be a function. But it will have a break in the graph at 0. X could not be 0. So we can say it's a function, but x can't be 0. All right, so that takes care of all of our function work. Let's talk about linear and nonlinear. Right here, we have a plus 2. This is a plus 2 for our common difference. And here's where we have a minus 2. Because we do not have a common difference, this is nonlinear. Let's make that more clear. When I look at my graph of y equals 3, I see that it's a straight line. So I know that this is linear. When I graph this line, I can also see that it is a linear. But here I have an x in the denominator. An x in the denominator means that this is non-linear. So great, now we can determine if something is a function or not because x is repeating. And we know that it's linear or not if we use graphing and common difference. Alrighty, let's talk domain and range, and then we'll talk discrete or continuous. Domain is your x values. Range is your y values. Discrete means dots. Continuous means connected. So let's look at number 5. I'm going to talk first about my domain and then my range. All right, so my domain is x values. Here, I'm looking for x values. They're getting smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller. And this arrow says go on forever to infinity. To negative infinity, forever and ever and ever and ever. So my domain will be all real numbers. All real numbers. Same thing on this side, right? We're going out to positive infinity. The range is going to be the y values. It's y. So these arrow markings are telling me to go all the way up to positive infinity for my range. And this graph goes all the way down to 0. So y has to be bigger than 0. All right, so again, your domain is all real numbers, and then your range is going to be the y-axis, bigger than 0. This is also connected. All of the dots are connected into one line, so this is going to be continuous. Let's talk through number 6, which is these dots, this scatter plot here. Again, your domain is your x's. So I have an x value here of -2. I have an x value here of -1. I have an x value here of 0. And an x value here of 3. My range is all of the y values. So I have a y value here at -2. I have a y value here at -1. A y value at 0. And +3. And again, because this is dots, we're going to call this discrete. Discrete. Number 7 is he asking us to evaluate. Evaluate means, in this case, substitute. So we are going to go to g of -1, 0, and 4. Right? They want us to evaluate -1, 0, and 4. So we're going to use this equation, which is 3x squared plus 1. And instead of the x, we're going to put the number, 4. So 3 times 4 squared plus 1. Now we'll go back to the original equation, and we'll put a 0 in. So 3 times 0 squared plus 1. And then 3 times -1 squared plus 1. Alright, so g of -1, g of 0, g of 4. Now we got everything set up. We're just going to put this into the calculator and read off our answer. The first one we see is 3 times -1 squared, and then plus 1. That's going to give us 4. So g of -1 is 4. Now let's go to g of 0 and type this into the calculator. We have 3 times 0 squared, and then plus 1. So that gives us 1. So g of 0 is 1. Now let's go g of 4. So 3 times 4 squared plus 1 gives you 49. So g of 4, when you evaluate it, is 49. All right, on to the other side. We're going to use the same numbers here. We're going to have the same thing. It's going to say b of 0, b of -1, and b of 4. b of x is negative 2x minus 4. So we're going to take a negative 1 and put the negative 1 in here for x. So negative 2 times negative 1 minus 4. Negative 2 times 0 minus 4. Negative 2 times 4 minus 4. All right, so from here, let's put everything in our equations into our calculator so that we can write our final answer. We're going to have b of negative 1, we're going to have b of 0, and b of 4. All right, so b of negative 1 says negative 2 times negative 1 minus 4. That's negative 2. So that's our first answer here, negative 2. b of 0 says 0 minus 4. And b of 4 says negative 2 times 4 minus 4. Negative 12. Negative 12 here. Okay, here we have to find the value of x so that f of x equals 3. Another way to say f of x is y. Y equals 3. So they're asking, what will x be? Well, let's come over here to where y equals 3. And if that's where y equals 3, then that means that x will equal 2. On the next one, again, they're saying that y equals 3. Y equals 3. So we're going to go out to where y equals 3, and we're going to hit our graph. Put a little dot when you hit the graph. It goes straight down to the x-axis. The x-axis drops out at 1. So we're going to say that x equals 1. Great. All right, a couple more questions on this side of the page, then we'll flip over to the back side. They're asking for x, y of this graph. So your x-intercept is when y equals 0. So take your equation and say 2 times x plus 3 times 0 is 6. Divide by 2 so that x equals 3. On the next one, we're going to stay with our x-intercepts. X-intercepts are where y equals 0. So we have negative 3x plus 5 times 0 is negative 30. This is 0. So divide by negative 3. X is 10. And this, of course, is because we have negative 10 on the denominator. Negative 30 divided by negative 10 is going to give you that positive 3. Okay. Whoops. Negative 30 divided by 3, right? Negative 30 divided by negative 3. There's that positive 10 we were looking for. Okay. Last one, again, y equals 0. Because this is the x-intercept. So 1/2 x plus 0 is negative 8. So multiply by 2. 2 times 1/2. 1/2 of 2 is 1. Multiply by 2. So you're going to get negative 16. All right, now let's talk about your x-intercepts. your y-intercepts. Your y-intercepts are when x equals 0. So now we get to go back to our original equation. And we're going to put in that x equals 0 this time. So 2 times 0 plus 3y is 6. Negative 3 times 0 plus 5y is negative 30. 1/2 times 0 plus y equals negative 8. 2 times 0 is 0. So we're just left with 3y equals 6. So I can divide both sides by 3 so that y is 2. 3 times 0 is 0. So I can divide both sides by 5. And I get that y is negative 6. The last one, this is 0. So there is my answer. Y is negative 8. So there's our intercepts, x and y, for these linear equations. That takes care of the front page. Let's go on to the back side. Okay. They want us to find the slopes here. Remember that your slope is just the common difference. And the way we're going to write that common difference is put y on the numerator and x in the denominator. So on number 14, we have a common difference here of plus 2. And we have a common difference here of minus 3. And our common difference in the x is plus 2. So to make our slope, all we need to do is take our common difference in y and divide it by the common difference in x. So here, the slope equals negative 3 divided by 2. Alrighty, let's work on our slope here. We have 0, 0, and 0. And then on the bottom, we've got 9, negative 10, and 8. All right, so because all of these are different, when we go to write our slope, we need to put this number divided by 0, and this number divided by 0, and this number divided by 0. So when x equals 0, like the common difference, so if the common difference of x is 0, then slope is undefined. Undefined is your slope because x is 0. Now we're going to graph the linear equation. These graphs happen when you make a table. And we're going to choose points that will fit on this graph. So I'm going to choose negative 1, 0, and 2. And over here I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to have my x and my y. And I'm going to choose negative 1, 0, and 2. And get us some numbers here. So x is negative 1. So if x is negative 1, we need to just solve out for whatever this y number is going to be. So on a separate sheet of paper, I will make my equations. I will say, all right, guys, so we have x minus 3y equals 6, and we're going to use negative 1 for x. So in the equation, we have negative 1 minus 3y equals 6. In the next one, we're going to have 0 minus 3y equals 6. And the last one, 2 minus 3y equals 6. So let's solve this out. I'm going to add 1 to both sides here. I'm going to subtract 2 to both sides here. And this is nothing. This goes away. This goes away. So now I've got a division problem with -3. So in this first one, when x is -1, y is going to be 7 over -3. 7 over -3. Now let's look at the next one. We're going to divide again by -3, and that gives me that y equals -2. So -2 goes here. Now if we put a 2 in this equation, we have 6 minus 2. 6 minus 2 is 4. And then again, we divide by -3. So this is 4 over -3. All right. All right, so let's put our points onto our graph. We have 0, -2, which is right here. And the other point I'm going to use is 2, -1.5. 2, -1.5. All right, and then -1 will be -7 over 3. It's about right here. I'm going to take my straight edge, my calculator, and I'll graph my line. All right, let's go on to our next equation, number 17. So again, we've got this t-chart here, and we're going to say that y equals -2/3 times 0 plus 1. And then we've got y equals -2/3 times -1 plus 1. And y equals -2/3 times 2. Oops, positive 1 there. Well, we can use -1. Okay, plus 1. So this will be 0. So in the first case, y equals 1. This right here is going to be a positive 2/3. Positive 2/3 plus 1 is 3 over 2. And the last one, I have -2/3 times 2, and then plus 1. So my answer is -1/3. All right, so let's do our points. We have 0, 1. So 0 is the x value, 1 is the y value. Now let's go over to, we have 2. At 2, we have -1/3, which is about right here. And then 1.53 over 2, 1.5 is going to be where x is -1. About right. Great. So now that we've got all of our points on the graph, we can put down our calculator and connect the dots. All right, so we got 3 equations. We're going to do slope, intercept, and graph of the line. So let's look at those first.